Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Holly Kane. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollykane.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Hi, friend. You're listening to episode 171 of the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, and I am so glad that you are joining us for this episode. Now, last week, we talked about how to pursue a passion project when living a full life. And if you haven't listened to that one yet, I would definitely encourage you to do so. We've gotten some great feedback from some of our listeners about that. In fact, one of our listeners said she listened to it twice. So that was pretty fun. Now, today is going to be a great follow-up to that conversation because we're talking about managing your time and priorities as a leader. And our guest, Christy Wright, is back with us for a conversation all about the topic of balance. This is such an important topic, but one that can get a little dicey because there's a lot of misconceptions around the issue of balance. In fact, Holly and I did a couple episodes way back in 2019, and I will link those up in the show notes for this episode about the issue of balance, and we kind of shared our perspectives on that topic. But today, Christy shares a fresh perspective to the issue of balance and helps us redefine what it truly means. So in this conversation, we will talk about what life balance means, why so many of us feel out of balance, how we can determine our priorities, how to determine when we need to stop doing something, why we might need to outsource, and how we can't allow others' opinions of this to affect us, and so much more. I know you're going to love this conversation as much as Holly and I did. Now, if you missed the first time Christy was on, you are going to want to listen to those episodes too, because we talked through our normal questions that we ask about a leadership journey and some of those backstory questions back in episodes 143 and 144. So again, if you haven't heard those ones, go ahead and listen to that, because today's episode is just going to be purely diving into the topic with Christy. All right, before we dive in, I want to share with you about today's sponsor for the episode, which is my Uplift Mentor Mind. Now, this is a program that is designed for Christian women business owners who are service providers, coaches, or course creators who are building a business online. And it is the solution for motivated, multi-passionate Christian businesswomen who want to find their sweet spot, optimize their marketing, and reach their financial goals in their business. So this is where we are going to gain clarity and focus in your business, help you with your marketing efforts, and build powerful relationships as well as experience breakthroughs in your mindset and marketing. And this is done in the context of the support and guidance of a coach and mentor, which is me, the feedback and community of a Christian mastermind, and the context of our faith, and that being the priority in our businesses. So I would love to invite you, if that sounds like something you could use and you are an online business owner and want that extra support that could really take your business to the next level, then come to upliftmentormind.com and find out more and go ahead and apply now, because right now, if you're listening in real time at the end of September 2021, the doors are open for new members for a limited time. So I would love to invite you into the Mentor Mind. Now let's go ahead and dive into our conversation with Christy Wright. Well, welcome back, Christy, to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. We are so glad to have you back with us again. And we are going to dive in and talk about balance and time management with you, because that's what your new book is all about. So I want to start off, Christy, because you are a wife, you're a mom of 3 kids, you work a full-time job, you've written several books, and you're currently launching your new one. And you're also attending seminary.
I'm basically bored, Esther. I'm really super bored.
There's probably a lot of other things in there that we don't even know about that you do. So I'm guessing you've heard the question before, how do you balance it all?
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard that a few times.
Yes.
But what we would love to know to start us off in this conversation is, do you believe that balance, in the sense of what most people probably mean by that question, is actually possible?
Well, it's interesting. And I love how you asked that, because I think that we all do want balance, but we have the wrong ideas about balance. And so because we have the wrong ideas about balance, it sets us down this path to pursue that wrong, misinformed idea of balance. And then we never get there, and we're discouraged and we're anxious and we feel like we're failing, and we're not. We just have the wrong ideas about balance. And so what's interesting, Esther, you and Holly, we've been friends for a while, and I've spent 10 years coaching women in business, small business, side business, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting is, in 10 years of being a business coach and 10 years of helping women with businesses, the number one question I'm asked is not a business question. It's exactly what you just said. How do you balance it all?
Yeah.
How do you balance everything? And so what is interesting is, when we talk about it, we use balance as a verb, how you balance it all, for anyone that's watching right now. And so then it gives this message that of a scale, like it's an evenly weighted scale. And so we feel like, I've got to work 50% of the time, have a life 50% of the time. And we know that's not realistic, and that's not sustainable or even desirable. And then I think, okay, well, it can take on kind of a different meaning of, well, we've got to do everything for an equal amount of time. I'm going to have my quiet time with God, and my time working out, and my time with girlfriends, and time cleaning the house, and time with my husband, time with my kids, time work, like all of that. And it all has to be equal and perfect and do it every day, or I'm failing. And so that then explains why most of us feel like we're failing, because of course that's not even remotely possible. And so it sent me down this path to really research and discover, what are we really after? Do we really want a perfect scale? Does that make us feel what we want to feel and live the life we want to lead in it? And it doesn't. And so we come up with these analogies. We've got spinning plates and juggling balls and walking the tightrope, and some balls are rubber and some balls are glass. And what balls can you let drop on a Tuesday? And that's fine, but it didn't help me, because I can do all of that. Juggle the balls, spin the plates, etc. And I can still feel like something's not right. And to be honest, have y'all ever seen a tightrope walker? Like, every fiber of their body is stressed. Like they're on edge. This is not a fun way to live our lives. And so I just started asking a different question. What if balance isn't so much something you do, like we think about it and like we describe it? What if balance is something you could create in your life, and it's more like a feeling, where you could be balanced and still be busy, where you could be balanced in an out of balance world, where balance looks more like being proud of how you spend your time, peace, even amidst the chaos, being confident in your choices when you say yes to this thing or no to that thing, just enjoying your life. And I think that that's what we're really after when we say we want balance. I'm going to call it balance, but what I'm going to give you is what I think you really want and need in your life.
Oh, that's so important. I think that when we're striving so hard for something, it's so important to define what that is. And I think nowadays, definitions are so important, because we're chasing after things that we think are one thing, and in fact, they're something completely different, or they're defined by society as something completely different. And it sets us off onto a different path completely. So many of our listeners are high achievers and women who tend to get a lot done. At the same time, we all struggle and feel like maybe we're not getting enough done. And so in your new book, Take Back Your Time, you say balance doesn't come from getting more done. You don't need more hours in a day, and I don't either. More time isn't the answer, because balance isn't a math problem. Instead, you have a phrase you use called life balance. And so I'm hoping that you can define that for us. What do you mean by life balance? And I think you alluded to it at the end of your last answer, but if you could dive a little bit more deeply into that, we'd so appreciate it.
Yeah. So if it's not this 50-50 split, and I don't believe it is, you can do that and still feel like things aren't right. And if it's not doing everything for an equal amount of time, and I don't believe it is, then what is it? Well, I think that life balance comes from doing the right things at the right time. And when you do the right things at the right time, you actually feel that sense of balance that you've been looking for all along. And the great news is you get to decide what's right for you. And you guys talked about this a second ago, but the pressure we feel, not just the message we get from society of here's what a perfect balance looks like, and here's what a perfect mom looks like, and so on, a successful business leader. But then we see everyone around us doing things differently. And we think, oh, well, I've got to do it like that. Well, if I'm going to be a good mom, I need to look like that. If I'm going to be successful in business, I need to do that. And yes, of course, we want to learn from best practices from anyone succeeding in any area. But the truth is that's what's right for you in your life, with your values, with your family, with your season, is going to be different than what's right for someone else. And so if you look to your right or to your left to figure out what you should be doing, it's going to set you down the wrong path. You're going to be stressed, frustrated, and anxious because you're pursuing something that's not for you. That's where a lot of times, we can get into the spiritual aspect of this because I know you guys are believers, but I think when we have a misalignment between what God has for us and what we're pursuing, that's where that anxiety comes in. You feel like something's not right because it's not right, because you're trying to do things that are not for you. And so what I want to help people do through this book, it's actually not a message of productivity. It's not a message of how to be more efficient, multitask, get more done. It's not. It's actually about how to focus you to seek and pursue and get clarity on what is right for you, and then give you permission to do that. Because I think when we do the right things, the things that God has for us, it's not that we're not tired. Y'all, I'm real tired right now. I've got 3 kids under age 6. I've been tired for 6 years since I started having kids. Like, of course I'm tired, but it's that good kind of tired where you at least you have this sense of purpose and fulfillment that you are spending your time in your one life on the right things, the thing that God has for you. And so when you bring that into alignment, when you agree and commit and spend your time on those things that are right for you, you feel the sense of relief. Your shoulders drop and that anxiety lessens, if not completely disappears, because you're no longer trying to do all these things that are not for you. And you're finally focusing and spending time on things that are right for you. That's where that sense of balance comes from.
Yeah. I just love that you're talking about this idea of alignment, because I think that is such a challenge for all of us when we are doing all these things and there's such a pressure of what other people want us to do and what other people are doing. And we're comparing and we're looking around. And then, like you said, we're doing things that don't even make sense for our gifts, our calling, our purpose, all of that. So it's so important to think through that. So you talk about in the book 4 main reasons that we feel out of balance. So could you just share a few of those with us?
Yes. So because the thesis of the entire book is life balance is doing the right things at the right time, we need to know what gets in the way of that. So there's 4 main causes. I'll go over them briefly. 1, doing too many things. This is the most obvious, but our time is finite. We have 24 hours in a day. So you can't do everything all the time. It's just not physically possible. And when you put that pressure on yourself to do everything all the time, that's where you do feel like you're falling short and you're failing, because the standard you have of yourself is completely unrealistic. So we need to identify what is realistic within the 24 hours a day that we have. What is realistic within the energy capacity that we have, within the restraints of our world and the demands and responsibilities that we have on us. So that's the first one. The second one is not doing enough things. This would be for someone, let's say someone that is newly retired or an empty nester, and they find themselves in a new season where they have a lot of time that they didn't have before, and they feel a little lost, maybe a little aimless or purposeless, a little bit bored, and they're out of balance in the opposite way, because we all need relationships to connect with and responsibilities to show up for and outlets to pour our gifts into. So if you don't have enough going on, which is probably not your listener, but let's just say that there are some people that maybe have been in this season. We all experienced it last year, by the way. The first couple of weeks of quarantine, we're like, this is awesome, a clear calendar. And then about 3 weeks in, we're like, I'm bored. Like, I need things to do. So we cleaned out our attic and just started cleaning our whole house, right? So we need these things in order to feel a sense of balance. So either doing too many things or not doing enough things are the first 2. The third one is doing the wrong things. So this is what we were talking about a minute ago. When you are chasing someone else's version of success, or what God has called someone else to, or what someone else is doing well for themselves, you're going to feel out of balance because you're doing the wrong things. Now, sometimes this evidences itself in our life as anxiety, as dread, as resentment. If you've got things you're showing up for and you dread them and you did them out of guilt or obligation, if you have a full-time job that you hate, I don't want you to walk out on it tomorrow, but I want you to pay attention that, hey, you're never going to feel balanced if you spend a large portion of your time doing something that you hate, because life balance is doing the right things in the right time. And if you're spending 40 plus hours a week doing something that's wrong, of course, you never feel in balance. And then the fourth one is not doing the right things. So let's say that you have some things that are really important to you, things that you care deeply about. They're life-giving to you. They mean a lot to you. You're not doing them out of guilt or obligation or peer pressure or comparison. You just really, really care about this thing, but you never spend time on it. Never. You're going to feel out of balance because there's an inconsistency in your life between what you care about and what you spend your time on. Life balance is doing the right things at the right time. So you have to do what's right for you. And many people, and I'll speak to the women for a second. I got a lot of specific things that call us out as women because we have natural tendencies that get us into traps in this area in particular. But one of the things we never spend time on is ourselves. Never. And I don't mean a pedicure on your birthday. Okay. Self-care is not a pedicure on your birthday. I mean, a rhythm of life where you honor yourself. You honor the temple of the Holy Spirit. You go to bed when you need to go to bed to be rested, to be a happy, nice person the next day, where you take care of yourself from your nutrition. You're skipping meals because you're rushing around. You sit down to have a meal instead of rushing around. And does it take changing some habits? Yes. Does it take teaching the people around you what's needed? Sure does. But it's worth it because if not, you're going to spend your whole life grumpy and rushed and running ragged and resentful. And that is no way to live. And that's not a way to shine the light of Jesus to people, by the way. So you need to figure out what is right for you. What does that look like within your life? Whether that's taking care of yourself or reading a good book, going back to school, a hobby, volunteering, going to church, whatever. Figure out what's right for you in this time and spend time on those things. And that's where we get that alignment. And I will give one caveat to this. What's right for you right now may not be something you're aware of. I would have never told you a year ago if you said, Christy, is what's right for you in the fall of 2021 when you're launching a book, seminary? I'd be like, that's not right for me ever, by the way. I'm not going to seminary. I'm not an academic. I didn't grow up in the church. Like, I am never going to seminary. Are you crazy? And yet here I am. And so God will often show you what's right for you, even if it surprises you or pushes you outside your comfort zone. And so it's not so much about what I want to do. It's about what is right. What is important? What is God calling me to? What is right for me? And that's what you need to spend your time on.
Christy, I have to say, I know you said the first point was super obvious, but I have to say that I needed to hear it because this weekend I literally had the thought, like, we're in a church plant location. And honestly, I thought to myself, I want to do everything. I just want to do all the jobs. I just want to do them all. And so I needed to hear that. And I'm sure there's lots of people who are listening who needed to hear that. And I think the thing about these points is that they're so simple and yet so profound. And they're things we need to be reminding ourselves often. And they're things that we need to be checking ourselves on often. So
thank you.
Yeah, I needed that.
Good. We're all guilty of it. We all just want to do more than is possible. And the truth is, and y'all know this because I talk about this later in the book in prioritizing, which we can get to later, but things will fall below the line.
Yeah.
And if we try to shove everything above the line, meaning we try to do everything in the church, shove everything in the 24 hours a day, more than it can hold, then we don't have control over what falls below the line. So instead, what I want you to do is be realistic about what you want to make sure makes it above the line in your time, in your house, in your relationships, whatever. And what are you going to choose to fall below the line? And then you are then in control of what falls below the line. And you're actually choosing that no. You're choosing to let that thing go. You're not going to feel guilty for it. And you know, most importantly, you know that what's falling below the line are the things that should be falling below the line.
So good.
I can never keep my whole house clean at one time unless I send my children to boarding school because they just can mess up faster than I can clean. And so I've chosen which rooms to fight for. The kitchen, the living room, my bedroom. I'm in those rooms most of the time. And so I fight hard to keep them clean. And I do. For the most part, those rooms are almost always clean. The bonus room, the kids' room, and the deck where there's lots of toys and the kids are going to destroy it 5 seconds later, I let them go. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, But when I walk in the playroom and it's a mess, I no longer have this narrative. You're failing. You're falling behind. You're a bad mom. You need to clean this up. You need to clean this up. You need to clean this up. No, I walk up there and I go, I chose that no. I chose to let that go. I'm not a victim. I chose to let that fall below the line. So I'm not going to feel guilty for that. And in fact, that no represents a yes, a better yes somewhere else. So that means that 5:30 to 7:30, instead of cleaning up, I'm playing with my kids. And that's really, that goes above the line. Playing with my kids in the evenings, that goes above the line, not cleaning the playroom. And so it gives you this sense of control, personal responsibility, yes, but also shaking the guilt, going, hey, I'm choosing what I'm saying yes to and fighting for, and I'm choosing what I'm saying no to and letting fall below the line. But you can do this with your calendar. What are you going to say no to so that you can say yes to those more important things?
Our yeses are just as important as our nos.
And we never focus on it, Holly.
Yeah.
We never focus on the yes. You have 50 things on your to-do list. You accomplish 47 and you beat yourself up for the 3.
Oh, yeah.
We focus on the negative. You show up to 400 events in a week and you focus on the 3 that you had to decline or not show up to. And that's a big piece of this. We talk about this in the chapter on being present, but it's not just being present for what's in front of you. It's being proud of what you're doing right. Being proud of the 47 things you accomplished, being proud of the events you showed up to, flipping your focus to your yes. So you can finally, maybe for once in your life, be proud of how you're spending your time. Because I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that no one listening to this podcast is sitting on their couch, eating Cheetos, binge watching Netflix all day, doing nothing. For all those no's, you have all these yeses. You're just neglecting your yeses. You're ignoring your yeses. Turn your attention toward your yeses and be proud of them. You're doing so much better than you think you are. But as long as we focus on the no, of course, we're going to feel guilty. I want to help people flip their focus there.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course we're trapped. Of course we're trapped there because we're so focused on that last 3%. So as we're talking about this, you've given us so many good points and some practical tips, but obviously you believe that life balance is possible. So what's the golden key? How do we achieve it? How do we get there?
I think it's more internal focused than external focused. I don't think I've said it like that yet. I really don't say it like that in the book, but the way that you asked the question, I feel like I needed to clarify it in a really specific way. I do use an analogy in the book of my son's boats in the bathtub. And he has this one boat that is like, looks really cool. And it's this ferry boat and you can like load cars onto it. And it looks so cool. Like it has all these features, but really the design sucks because as soon as a drop of water gets on the top, the whole thing sinks. Like it's kind of pitiful, even though it looks really cool. But he has this other boat that's tiny and red. And the boat doesn't have any features. It doesn't have anything flashy about it. But what's so fascinating about this boat is the boat itself is balanced. So even if the waves toss and turn it, even if my son drags it to the bottom of the bathtub, it pops back to the surface and flips upright again. The boat itself is balanced. It's not depending on the waves to balance it. And that is such a powerful analogy for life. If you're waiting until our world is balanced, if you're waiting until the world stops demanding of you or putting obligations on you or having opportunities for you or telling you what you should be doing, you will never be balanced. The great news is you are in control of you. You're in control of what you say yes to, what you say no to. You're in control of your calendar and your to-do list. You're in control of what you give attention to and what you're present for. And I believe that if we can learn to control those things that we can control, we can become a balanced person in an out of balance world, where those waves of the world don't shake us like they used to and toss us here and there. And I think that is a really powerful turning this word on its head. I think it's a powerful, not only opportunity for us, I think it's a message of freedom that is going to set women free in this crazy, crazy world we live in.
Yeah. So Christy, in the book, you talk about the importance of stopping doing what doesn't matter. And earlier you were saying, one of the things that keeps us out of balance is doing too many things. But I think one of the challenges specifically for our listeners is, like we said, they are high achievers. They're often doing a lot of things, but figuring out what doesn't matter is really challenging because it feels like our job or our business and our church and our marriage and our kids and volunteering, it feels like all of it is above the line, all of it is the stuff that is super important. So do you have any thoughts on how we can actually figure out what are the things that we can let go of? What can we stop doing in order to get that life balance in place?
Well, you make a good point. And I talk about this in the chapter on prioritizing because women in general are really terrible at prioritizing. We put everything on the same equal playing field. If you imagine a horizontal line, we just this, and it's all important. Everything from paying bills to steam cleaning our couch cushions, it's all important. And we have trouble discerning what's most important, what makes it above the line in your example. The way that I talk about priorities in the book is you probably, and we can go into fixed and flexible if you want to, because I think that's so relevant to my Christian audience, especially. But we, in general, probably have 7 to 10 priorities in life, 7 to 10 things we care about in life in general. And that's fine. That's a great number. The only problem is we can't fit 7 to 10 priorities in our life all at the same time, and we try. So what I encourage people to do is, yes, you're going to have your list of things that matter to you. It's 7 to 10 items long, working out, time alone, time with God, whatever. It's around 7 to 10 most likely. But in any given season, only 3 to 5 of those are going to get your focus. It doesn't mean you're completely neglecting those other things, but they are either falling below the line or they're getting less of your time. So let me give you an example. This summer, which was a lighter season for me, just light in general. I didn't have the book launch going on yet. Wasn't a busy season at work. It's a slower season for me at work. So when you're in a slower season in work or family or whatever's going on, whatever your season will always determine what matters to you and what balance looks like. So I talk about that extensively in the book, which is so vital to all of this making sense. But in this season, it's a lighter season. So more things make it above the line. My house was clean. I hung out with friends, had great time with my family, got some work done, worked out regularly, like more things made it above the line. Okay, let's fast forward to present day. I'm in the middle of a book launch. Way fewer things are making it above the line. Okay, if we're just going to keep it real here, I've got 3 things making it above the line. Launching the book, and that's A1. Now, before all my women out there are like, she's a bad mom. She said work's more important than her kids. No. I'll talk about priorities in a second. These are specific, tangible, practical priorities that reflect your calendar. What's actually do you need to focus on? And yes, if I get an opportunity to fly to New York tomorrow and do an interview that's going to get this book into hundreds of thousands of eyeballs, or just be home with my kids, I'm going to New York because the most important thing right now is launching my book. Being with my kids. Any minute that I'm not launching the book, I'm with my kids. And third, seminary. So that means that a lot of things that are normally important to me, like time with friends, working out, or having a clean house, even the bedroom's a disaster right now, y'all, they've fallen below the line. But I don't look at that and go, oh, I'm failing because my bedroom's a mess. I go, oh, no, I'm in a season of launching a book. This mess makes perfect sense. I'm living out of a suitcase. Of course it's a mess. So you're changing your focus in terms of how you perceive yourself in terms of your season. Now, one of the things I want people to realize is that when I talk about priorities, there are 2 types of priorities. And I go into this in the book, but we all have a set of fixed priorities. Here's what that means. That means when push comes to shove and all heck breaks loose, this is what matters most. My kids are above my work in that list. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously. Thankfully, we don't live in a world where all heck is breaking loose all the time. So in addition to your fixed priorities in that doomsday scenario that we don't live in, we need other sets of flexible priorities that are more reflective of the season that we're in, the week that we're in, the day that we're in. They're more current, relevant, specific, and practical. And so then we look at the beginning of the season and go, hey, what's most important this season? Because I have heard, and I'm sure anybody does this, but I really hear my Christians do this. And I love the Lord, y'all. I love the Lord. But some of you, when you talk about priorities, here's what they say to me, Esther. I'll be like, yeah, I love to help people with priorities. I got my priorities. My priorities are God, other, self in that order. I'm like, that is beautiful. That's a beautiful Sunday school answer. That did not help me manage my Tuesday. So I'm going to need another set of flexible priorities that reflect the time frame you're in, whether that's your season. My priority for the spring was getting my boys to swim. That's practical. It affected my calendar. It affected how I made choices with my time. And guess what? Because I did that back then, my boys are swimming like fish and jumping off the diving board. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I decided it was a priority. I'm getting the book out in the world. That's a priority. So you begin to get honest with yourself about what's most important in this season. And so in your example, Esther, that you were asking about, just ask yourself, if you're in a season, for example, where one area of your life needs you more than others, then that's okay. You're saying, hey, in this season, I've got one child that really, really needs me. I've got one child that's got some struggling in school. I need to be really hands-on. I'm going to take my foot off the gas over here or take the pressure off myself over here because we're going to let these things make it above the line. So it's not that those things totally drop. They're just less. I work out maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. It hasn't fallen off the radar. It's just not above the line in this season. And importantly, just because something's not right now doesn't mean it's never right. I will hang out with my friends again. I will work out again. I'll have a clean house again when I'm not in book season. And so giving yourself, going, hey, what's right now, knowing that will change, and it should.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I think as women, we feel like we set our priorities once and then we never have to look at it again, because set it and forget it, it's done, right? And that's going to carry me through. But I feel like what you're talking about is having regular check-ins on what the priorities are this week or this season or this month, and freeing ourselves from all the things we're tying ourselves to that don't work in this season. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this. One of the other things that I'm glad that you actually said was, before anyone says I'm a bad mom, let me clarify. And I feel like we as women, we as mothers are constantly saying that. Hold on a second, before you judge me for being a bad mom, wait. And I think that, in a recent episode of your podcast, you mentioned that you have a nanny. And so I would love for you to talk about how you can let go of the fear of what others might think if you do decide to outsource some things of your life, right? And so others may judge, what we're outsourcing and what we feel like makes sense to outsource. And so how do you combat that? How do you talk about that? And how do you free yourself from that fear?
Well, I love this question. And this is something we could camp on for a while because it's so complex. So at the root of what's going on in us, if we're going to just keep it real, the root of what's going on in us is incredible arrogance, because we assume that our way is the only way. Our way is the right way. And what God is asking us to do is right for everyone. That's pretty arrogant to think that I know best. I know what you should be doing more than you know what you should be doing, and more than God knows what you should be doing. Let me tell you how you need to parent your kids or live your life. So that's pretty arrogant. So let's look at some examples. Let's say that God has called one woman to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's right for her. If she looks at me, she's like, oh, am I failing? I'm not working. I'm not, out there doing XYZ type of work, using my gifts in this way. No. What's right for you is maybe different than what's right for someone else. Then in my case, for example, God has called me to this work, like literally called me to this work. I know I am doing what I'm called to do. So in order to do what I'm called to do, which is travel and speak and be all over the place, the way for me to make that possible is to have a nanny. By the way, as a side note, not that I need to explain it, but a nanny is actually more cost effective than having 3 kids in daycare. I've already done the math. Okay. So while we look at nannies, oh, you're so bougie, I'm actually probably spending less than most people that have 3 kids. When you start getting into the higher kids range in daycare, and then not to mention when they're sick and they have to go, I can't get called out. If I'm on Fox and Friends, I can't be like, oh, sorry, daycare called. So a nanny is actually necessary for me to get to this work. So I feel zero guilt about having a nanny. This is a person in my corner, and she's a part of our family. We adore her, and we've been super intentional in integrating her into our family. So when we do family events, family barbecue, family pictures, she's there because we cherish her. She's a part of our family. I hate to know this, but that's not normal in the nanny world. Mothers resent their nannies. Nannies feel unappreciated by their mothers, and it's a very unhealthy dynamic that maybe someday in my retirement, I'll write a book on, because that crap should be fixed. Mothers need to include them, and they need to, anyway, I won't go into all that. But our dynamic is so beautiful, and we've been super intentional in that. So I think it goes back to what we said in the beginning, which is not looking to the right or left and asking what's right for this person. I'll tell you guys as an example, when I but just shared on Instagram months ago that I was going to seminary, I just felt like it was finally time to share it. Almost all positive. And then one woman commented on Facebook, your poor children, your poor husband. You have too many irons in the fire. This is not right for you. I mean, just this scathing. And I thought, I'm not asking for feedback because God told me to do it. So I know I'm an Enneagram 8, so I care a little less than most people probably do what people think of me. But I do care, and all of us care to some degree. But that's why it's important for all of us to refocus on what God is asking us to do. And if God is asking you to stay home, stay home. If God is asking you to work, work. If God is asking you to have a nanny, have daycare, whatever that help, work, home dynamic looks like for you, all that matters is that you're doing what's right for you. And you need to accept that some people won't get it. Some people won't understand. Some people will judge you. Some people will think you're bougie if you have a nanny. Some people will think, let me give you another example. I talked about this a couple of years ago during Nanny Week. Nanny Week's coming up, by the way, for anybody that does have nannies. I talked about this during Nanny Week when I was celebrating Becca. I was on a television show. I was booked to be on a television show a couple of years ago. We were talking about time management. You can tell this is a theme in my life that I talk about a lot. And she was asking for tactical tools that I use. And I said, well, we have this shared calendar that we all look at so we can see who's doing pickups. And it's like air traffic control at our house, like everybody getting everywhere. She said, well, who all shares it? I said, my husband, myself, and our nanny. This is the producer ahead of time. So ahead of the interview to kind of prep for it and get the talking points and graphics together. And she said, oh, okay, well, can we call her a babysitter? And I said, why? And she said, because it seems kind of elite and unrelatable if you say nanny. So can we just call her a babysitter? And I said, no, a babysitter is a 16-year-old that watches your kids on a Friday night for a movie. She's a professional nanny that's been with her family for 4 years. I'm not going to take away her dignity of her role to make a few judgmental people more comfortable. And so we have got to, for the people that are able to and want to speak up and stand up and set a different message of, hey, it's okay to have help. I don't want anyone to think I do it myself because I don't, because then that sends the message that you should be doing it yourself too. And I don't. I have help that I'm so grateful for. And if you don't have help, whether it's a nanny or family in town or whatever, then you need to lower the bar of what you expect of yourself. Your house should probably be a mess and you should be getting takeout because you don't have stinking help to help you. You got to do what you got to do to survive. So lower the bar of expectations on yourself. And if you do have help, don't feel guilty for that. That's a blessing that God has given you in your life. I don't feel remotely guilty for it.
I just love what you just shared, Christy. I think so many of us, including myself, need to hear that because especially the part about not comparing yourself to someone at a different phase or a different stage, or, like you said, I see a lot of business owners doing this where they're comparing what they're doing on social media to someone who has a team of like 6 full-time employees working for them, scheduling, creating content, putting out on 14 different platforms. And you're like, I can't keep up with Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I'm like, stop. Don't try to keep up with all of it because you don't have a team. You're just doing it yourself. So it's so important. Aside from outsourcing, which I love that you just shared those practical and, the wisdom that you just shared. But are there any other kind of practical tips that you could share with our listeners about just how you maintain life balance? Like any small habits you do or choices you make on a daily basis that help you maintain your life balance?
Yes. Well, let me give a quick overview of the path, and then I'll talk about one of those because it's one of the steps of the path. Okay. So life balance is doing the right things at the right time. And the next question is, well, how do you do that? So in the book, I lay out 5 steps to balance. Step 1, figure out what matters. Step 2, stop doing what doesn't matter. Step 3, create a calendar that reflects what matters. Step 4, protect what matters. And step 5, be present for what matters. You follow these 5 steps in any new season, by the way, any new season. So you go back to step 1 and go, okay, what matters now? Now that we have that health diagnosis, what matters now? Now that my kids are in school, what matters now? In any new season, it will determine what matters to you. So you need to go back to step 1, and then you will be doing the right things at the right time. But a tactical thing I do that I think many people miss is I put everything on my calendar. That's step 3. Now, one of the things I've noticed that we're bad about is we put all the junk we have to do that we don't get excited about on our calendar, and we don't put anything we want to do. But we just think the things we want to do are just going to happen. I'm just going to naturally go to bed early. I'm just going to naturally get that workout in. I'll work on my business when there's time left over. My husband and I will go on a date when we're finally not so tired. That never happens. So you never go on the date. You never work on the business. You never go to bed early. It's 11 o'clock. You're scrolling Instagram, and then you're grouchy the next day because you got 4 hours of sleep. So what I want to help people do is, as tactical as this is, if you want to do it, it needs to go on your calendar. It's not just because it's this rules system. It's the system you've chosen to live your life by. I mean, we say this, I live by my calendar. I live my calendar. It's full of soccer practices and dentist appointments and meetings. Well, you put those on there because you don't want to miss them. So if you don't want to miss these things, they need to go on the calendar. They're not happening because you're not putting them on the system you've chosen to live your life by. So whether it is read a book for an hour or bedtime at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever, put it on the calendar. Research shows you are almost 50% more likely to do something simply if you write it down. There's something about the visual, when I put something on my phone calendar or writing on a paper calendar, wherever you do it, that I go, oh, okay, I'm going to go for a run at 5 o'clock after work. Because if I don't put it there, then I'm tired and I drive home and I forget that I wanted to do that. And then it's 7 o'clock. It's like, oh man, I forgot to run. Just put it on the system you've chosen to live your life by. So anything and everything, date nights, quality time with kids, walk to the playground, whatever, put it on the calendar. And you can always break your own rule. You can always change your mind. It just gives you this system to do what you say you want to do.
That's so good. I think that there are some people who truly do live and die by their calendar. And then there's others, like you said, that just sort of hope that things happen. And we know as high achieving women that we do not just hope for things to happen. We make them happen. And I love that this is such, like I said before, a simple and tangible way of doing that.
People say all the time, I need to find time for that. And Tyler, who's sitting here with me in the studio, he always laughs. He's like, because he quotes me all the time, like, you don't find time, you make time. You never find time just lying around. You make it or it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard so many people say something to the effect of, like Beyonc has the same amount of time in her day as we all do. Used to kind of like manipulate, like you should be doing all the same things that Beyonc is doing. But I just want to say, like, honey, if you're home with your 3 kids, you do not have the platform that Beyonc has or the 35-person
17
staff.
nannies.
Yes, that she has.
If someone is staying home with their kids full time, they should not be doing what I'm doing.
No.
The reason I'm able to do what I do is because I have help. I have a super supportive spouse. I have an entire team here at Ramsey Solutions. I have a nanny and I have my mother that's 3 miles down the road. So if I need backup for something, I have help. If you don't have help, you've got to lower the bar. You've got to lower the bar on what you expect of yourself.
It actually made me think too of like creating that support system too, like finding your people, finding who those people are. And they're not always necessarily paid. I mean, you're swapping time with another stay-at-home mom. So you can go to Target and get a Starbucks while you look for diapers. Like, you know what I mean? Someone needs to have that time alone in the diaper aisle to just take a breath.
No, I wrote about this in the book, but 2 of my very best friends, they swap babysitting nights. And one will watch the kids so the other one can go on a date, and then they swap, and that costs no money. A lot of churches will have stuff for either single moms or even just childcare, drop-in daycare that's free. That's just a service to the community. So you make a really good point, Holly, because while you definitely should have the grace for yourself to not do everything that someone else is doing that has all this help, at the same time, don't let it make you angry. Yeah. Don't let it make you resentful and bitter. Like, well, I don't have. It's like if you're turning into a mean person, you probably need a break. So you just find some help, swap babysitting nights, get that church drop-in daycare, something to give yourself a break so you can get refueled and not be so angry and bitter, because no one needs an angry, bitter, resentful woman or mom in their life. And don't let it make you someone you don't want to be. So you need to do what you need to do to get the help that you need to be the person you want to be.
Yeah. Well, as usual, I have loved our conversation, and I know that our listeners will definitely love our conversation as well. So I'm wondering if we have someone who wants to connect with you in a deeper way or find where you are in all the places. Can you just let us know how they can do that?
Yes. Well, thank you. I hang out the most on Instagram, and my handle is @Christy Wright. And then you can find out anything else from the new book, Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance. All that is on ChristyWright.com. And of course, you can get it wherever books are sold or all that. But I'm mostly on Instagram hanging out.
Awesome, Christy. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you share with us today. We are so grateful for your time and for you sharing with us.
Oh, I love you both. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving us a rating and review in your podcast app? This helps more women just like you find the podcast, and it also helps them to know whether the podcast would be a good fit for them. Just go to the show in your podcast app, then scroll down until you see the option for ratings and reviews. From there, you can tap to rate and write a review. It means the world to us when you take a couple minutes to do this, and thank you so much to everyone who has left a review. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.